We'll start off with anarchy. Anarchy is a type of government, but it's a place that doesn't really have government, and there is a civil war going on. An anarchy happens in a country when the people start a war with the government, and this war continues for so long that it doesn't end. They call these countries anarchists. Like when ISIS was active in Syria, it was known as an anarchy. But Syria is not an anarchy anymore. Fortunately, no countries in the world are known as an anarchy right now. After Gaddafi, Libya was known as an anarchy, but it has settled down now. The next one, federal. For a federal government, the US can be used as an example. A powerful central government that has the army underneath it, but each state has their own government and they could set their own laws. And that's in a way where they don't have to get permission from the federal government. Like for example, in Colorado and California, you could legally buy marijuana, but like in Nevada and Florida, you cannot buy marijuana like that, and you could go to jail. You might say the states are independent, but it's not like that. They still have to follow a set of laws that's put by the federal government. Like in the state of New Mexico, a lot of Mexican people live there, but the people are not allowed to change the language of the state to Spanish. If they do that, the communication between the people are finished. The next form of government, monarchy. In a monarchy government, a king or queen controls the entire country. In a monarchy, the king and queen are the final decision maker in everything. So whatever they say goes. Like for example, Saudi Arabia. Let's talk about communism. If you read about communism on paper, it doesn't seem like a bad idea. But what does it say? Communism says a central government owns everything, all the businesses, all the farms, all the factories, all the schools and universities, hospitals, and even the vehicles. They all belong to the government. All people work for the government as well. You get a little bit of money and you get a tiny house. Getting rich doesn't mean anything. Putting in effort doesn't mean anything. They go to work, do some stuff, and come home and sleep. And at work, they don't put much effort. A government like this is like the USSR, North Korea, Cuba. As you see, they never advance because nobody has the passion to move forward. Every communist government started as freedom fighters, but in the end, they turned into monster dictators. In the USSR, if anyone was a tiny bit against the USSR or the communist regime, you will not be alive anymore. It is known that in the 80 years of the USSR, more than 100 million people were killed because they didn't agree with the communist regime. Which country is the biggest communist in the world right now? It's not that far, China. Right now, China is the biggest communist government. But there's a tiny difference in China, and it allows you to open businesses, open factories, and get rich. Just this alone allowed China to succeed. But since it's a communist country, there is some things you have to check on the checklist to be able to do that. And that means you have to be part of the CCP. What's the CCP? Chinese Communist Party. The difference between a normal country and China is that you can't just go and open a business. You have to work under the regime. The next government, totalitarian. Totalitarian can be anything. A communist, socialist, fascist, or even monarchy. Nazi Germany was a totalitarian government. Soviet Union, totalitarian. China is a totalitarian. North Korea, totalitarian. What's totalitarian? If you're in a country that's totalitarian, You're not even allowed to leave the city you live in. And that means if you want to go to a different city in your country, you have to get permission. Like in the Soviet Union, this was very important. Nobody could leave their own city. Forget about the whole country. China is like that right now. North Korea is like that. Totalitarians create fear, and the people have to obey. The next government, capitalist. A capitalist government is basically a free market, and it's all about money. Nobody comes forward and asks you, why are you asking $10 for this cup? You should sell it for $2. That's up to you. But you have to know that if you want to sell it for expensive, you have no customers because the country is capitalist and there's a lot of competitors. And competition brings the prices down. In a capitalist government, free service is very rare. Like for example, the US is the most capitalist country in the world. There is no free colleges, no free healthcare, and that means no hospitals or dentists for free. If you want to get these for free, you have to get health insurance. But in the end, you're paying for the health insurance and it's not free. In a capitalist country, people that work have benefits. But if they don't work, they don't get anything. A capitalist country has the fastest growth because people are finding a way to do something, invent something, use their talent somewhere. Anything they succeed in, they get rich. Just because everybody's trying to succeed, that makes the whole country succeed. A lot of people believe that capitalism caused the US to be a global superpower. The next government, fascism. A fascist government is extremely right-wing. There is a dictator in charge and they have their ideology, and that ideology has to be performed and nobody can say no. Two governments in history that were known as fascists, one is Nazi Germany and the other one is Benito Mussolini's Italy. And you guys already know what their ideology was. Another form of government is Marxism. Just like we said, fascism is a radical right-wing government. Marxism is the opposite, and it's a radical left-wing government. Marxism was Karl Marx's idea, and it's a form of communism. In a Marxist government, there's no class, there's no levels. Everybody in this government is equal. It's good to know that Lenin used Karl Marx's idea to start the revolution in Russia. And you guys know what happened in the end. Marxism and communism don't seem that bad on paper. It's great, everybody's equal. But when a person has to be behind this ideology, they're going to turn into a dictator. And it turns out to the countries we all know. Soviet Union, Mao in China, Kim Jong-un. The next government is imperialism. Imperialist countries go around the world and take control of different countries, and they act like the people of those countries belong to them. Like what Leopold did to the Congo, or England with South Africa. If we want to talk about imperialism, most of them happen in Africa, but a lot of different places as well. Another form of government is the oligarchy. An oligarchy government means a small group of people control the entire country. The group consists of famous and rich people, religious figures, and high-level military officers. Right now, the biggest oligarchy in the world is Russia. Second place in the oligarchy government is Ukraine, and these countries both came from the Soviet Union. The last thing we're going to look at is socialism. A socialist country is kind of a communist country. And that means instead of private businesses, it's government businesses. In these countries, if you work or don't work, you get a certain wage. There is no poor, but there are no rich either. You could say everybody's poor. It is true that they can live, but they're poor. Just like a communist country, in socialist country, there is no hope because there is no room for improvement. The ones that don't work get a certain amount of money. The ones that do work put very little effort in. The countries right now that consider themselves socialist, one of them is China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam. You might say, I thought China was communist. China could be considered a socialist country as well, because the USSR considered itself a socialist country. In your opinion, which one of these forms of government are the best? Please comment.